There was a man in Israel who was offered a crown, and he refused it. The people came to him after the war and asked him to rule over them, him, his son, and his son's son after that, a dynasty. And he told them no. He said the Lord would rule over them. That man had 70 sons. 69 of them would be dead before any of them wore a crown. And the one who finally wore it was the son nobody counted, the son born in another town, to a woman who was never called a wife. His name was Abimelech, and his name means "My father is king." Stay with this story, because it ends with a sentence. 7 words.
If you're enjoying this, I encourage you to subscribe. Go ahead and click that button right there. It just takes a second, and it really helps the channel.
Gasped out by a man with a crushed skull, lying in the dirt beneath a tower he came to burn. Not a prayer, not a confession, something else entirely. And when you hear it, you will understand exactly what he had been chasing his whole life, and what it cost him to catch it. This is not just the story of a man who murdered his way to a throne. It is the story of what grows inside a person who decides that if he will not be chosen, he will simply take. The father's name was Gideon, though the people also called him Jerubbaal. He had torn down an altar to Baal in his father's own town, and the name stuck to him like a scar. Let Baal contend with him. God had used him to break the Midianites with 300 men and a handful of clay jars. He was the closest thing Israel had to a hero. And when the fighting stopped, the hero made a mistake. He asked for the gold earrings taken from the enemy. The people piled them at his feet, and out of that gold he made an ephod, and he set it up in his hometown of Ophrah. He may have meant it as a memorial, but Israel came to it and bowed to it and burned things in front of it. The man who tore down one idol built another and did not notice. Gideon lived a long life. He had many wives and 70 sons by them, and a concubine down in Shechem who bore him one more. He died in a good old age and was buried in his father's tomb. And the moment the dirt settled over him, Israel turned. They went back to the Baals. They took a god for themselves and called him Baal-berith, Lord of the Covenant. And they did not remember the God who had pulled them out of Midian's hand. And they did not show kindness to the house of the man who had done it. The nation forgot the father before the sons finished mourning him. Now the son. Abimelech did not go to Ophrah when his father died. He went south down the road to Shechem, to the family of the woman who bore him, his mother's brothers, her whole clan. And he sat in their houses and put words in their mouths. He told them to go and ask the leading men of Shechem a question, just one: which is better for you, that 70 men rule over you, or that one man rules over you? And then quietly, the part that was doing all the work: remember that I am your bone and your flesh. 70 men were not ruling over anyone. There was no council of brothers in Ophrah plotting to govern Shechem. He invented the threat, and then he offered himself as the cure for it. Listen to how that argument works, because you have heard it before, in rooms you have stood in. They are many, and I am one. They have what should be ours. You and I are the same kind of people, and they are not. It is never presented as ambition. It is always presented as protection. They gave him 70 pieces of silver from the temple of their God. 70 pieces of silver, one for each son of Gideon. With it, he bought men, the reckless kind, the empty kind, men with nothing behind them and nothing ahead of them, who follow whoever is walking fastest. And they went up the road to Ophrah, to his father's house. The sons of Gideon were not soldiers that morning. They were at home. This was the house they had grown up in, and the men coming through the gate had the same blood in them. They found a stone in the courtyard, flat, wide, waist high. The kind of stone a family uses for 100 ordinary things across 100 ordinary years. They killed them on it, one after another, in the same place on the same surface, until 69 sons of Gideon were dead. Not 69 stones, not 69 graves. One stone was all it took. But there was a boy in that house, the youngest. His name was Jotham, and when the noise started, he did the only thing a youngest son can do. He made himself small, and he hid, and he did not come out. He heard all of it. Then they asked the vine, and the vine said, "Should I give up my wine, which cheers gods and men, to go and sway over the trees?" By evening the courtyard was quiet again, and Abimelech was walking back down the road to Shechem with his father's name on him like stolen clothing. They crowned him by the great oak at Shechem, beside the pillar. That spot was not chosen at random. Generations earlier, at that same oak, Joshua had gathered the whole nation and made them swear to serve the Lord alone. And he had set up a stone there and told them it would be a witness against them if they ever lied to God. So they put a crown on a murderer's head in the shade of that tree in front of that stone, and the stone said nothing. It only watched. Then somebody shouted from the mountain, "Mount Gerizim rises straight up over Shechem, and the sound carries down it." Jotham had climbed it in the dark and waited for the crowd, and now he was standing on the slope above them where no man could reach him quickly. He called out for them to listen to him so that God might listen to them. And he told them a story about trees. He said the trees once went out to anoint a king over themselves. They went first to the olive tree and asked it to rain. But the olive tree said, "Should I give up my oil by which gods and men are honored, to go and sway over the trees?" Then they asked the fig tree, and the fig tree said, "Should I give up my sweetness and my good fruit, to go and sway over the trees?" Then they asked the vine, and the vine said, "Should I give up my wine, which cheers gods and men, to go and sway over the trees?" Every tree that had something to give refused to rule. So at last the trees came to the bramble, the thorn bush, the thing that grows in dry ground and gives no fruit and no shade and no oil, the thing farmers burn to clear a field. And Jotham said, the bramble answered them, "If you truly are anointing me king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon." Then he stopped telling stories. He asked them whether they had acted in good faith when they crowned this man. He said their father Gideon had fought for them and risked his life for them, and they had repaid his house by killing 70 of his sons on one stone and making the son of his servant girl their king, for no reason except that he was their relative. And then he said the thing he had climbed the mountain to say, "If you have acted honestly today, then be glad in Abimelech, and let him be glad in you. But if you have not, then let fire come out from Abimelech and consume you, and let fire come out from you and consume Abimelech." Nobody answered him. There was no answer to give. Then Jotham turned and ran, and he kept running until he reached a town called Beer, because he was afraid of his brother. And he had every reason to be. He never appears in the story again. He did not have to. He had already said the only thing that mattered. Abimelech ruled Israel for 3 years. 3 years is long enough to start believing you got away with it. Long enough for the courtyard at Ophrah to be swept clean, for the men who did it to spend the silver, for the word king to stop sounding borrowed in his own ears. Nothing happened. No lightning, no army, no voice from heaven. You have had seasons like that, where the thing you did stays buried, and the days keep coming, and the silence starts to feel like permission. It isn't. Silence is not the same as approval. God is not always quick, and He is never late. In the 3rd year, God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with him, so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal would come home, and their blood would be laid on the brother who killed them, and on the city that paid for it. The men who had bought a king began to hate what they had bought. It started small, the way these things do. They put men on the hilltops to ambush travelers on the roads, robbing everyone who passed, which is another way of saying they stopped caring whether the roads under his rule were safe. His kingdom began eating itself at the edges. Then a man named Gaal came into town with his brothers, and the men of Shechem put their trust in him. It was harvest. They went out into the vineyards and trod the grapes, and held a festival in the house of their God. And they ate and drank and cursed Abimelech with their mouths full. Gaal stood up in the middle of it and asked them who Abimelech even was, that they should serve him. Wasn't he just Jerubbaal's son? Wasn't Zebul just his officer? "Serve the real men of this city," he said. "Give me command of this people, and I will remove him." The men who put the crown on his head were, 3 years later, drunk in a temple, laughing about taking it off. But Zebul was in that room. Zebul governed the city for Abimelech, and he sent messengers out that night, quietly, telling his king that Gaal was stirring up the city against him, and that he should come by night and lie in wait in the fields and rise at sunrise. Abimelech came the way he always came, in the dark, with 4 companies, and without warning. At dawn, Gaal was standing in the city gate when he saw movement coming down off the mountains. He said there were men coming down from the high ground. Zebul stood beside him and said he was seeing the shadow of the mountains as if it were men. He let him stand there and watch his death walk toward him, and he made it sound like a trick of the light. Gaal went out to fight. He was driven back to the gate, and many fell wounded before they reached it, and Zebul threw him out of the city, and that was the end of Gaal. The next morning, the people of Shechem went out into the fields, because life goes on, and crops do not wait. Abimelech was already there, split into 3 companies waiting for them. He killed them in the open ground. He fought the city all that day and took it, and killed the people in it, and pulled the walls down, and sowed the ground with salt, so that nothing would grow there again. The men who once asked whether they would rather be ruled by 70 or by 1 had their answer. What was left of the leadership fled into the stronghold of the temple of their covenant God, a tower with thick walls, the last safe place in the city, the house of the very God whose silver had paid for all of this. Abimelech heard where they were, and he went to Mount Zalmon with all his men, and took an axe, and cut a bundle of brushwood, and lifted it onto his own shoulder, and told his men to hurry, and do what they had seen him do. He carried the wood himself. He stacked it against the door himself. About 1,000 men and women died inside that tower. Fire came out of the bramble, exactly as the boy on the mountain had said it would. There was one more city, a place called Thebez. He took it easily, but inside the city there was a strong tower, and all the people ran into it, men and women, and every leading man of the town. And they shut the door behind them and climbed onto the roof. He had done this before. He knew exactly how it ended. He walked up to the door with fire in his hand, close enough to touch the wood. And a woman on the roof, whose name nobody wrote down, picked up an upper millstone and dropped it on his head. It crushed his skull. He was still alive when he hit the ground, and he had time for one thought. And the thought was not about the 69, or the courtyard, or the God his father had once obeyed. He called out to the young man who carried his armor, and he said, "Draw your sword and kill me." So they will not say of me, 'A woman killed him.' The boy drew it and thrust him through, and he died. He spent his whole life trying to control what people would say about him, and he spent his last breath doing the same thing, and it did not work. It is written down. Everyone knows. He killed 69 brothers on one stone, and it took him 3 years to lose everything. And in the end, one stone was all it took. When the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. There was no battle for succession. There was nothing to inherit. Everything he built was a fire, and fires do not leave anything behind. And Scripture says plainly why it happened. God repaid the wickedness Abimelech had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers, and God returned all the wickedness of the men of Shechem onto their own heads. The curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. So what does this ask of you? First, be careful what you are willing to do to be chosen. Abimelech's whole life was built around a wound. He was the son who was not counted. Maybe you know that ache, the sibling who got the attention, the colleague who got the role, the parent who never said it. That wound is real, and God is not offended by it. But a wound does not entitle you to anything. Abimelech took what he thought he was owed, and the taking is what destroyed him, not the wound. Second, watch who is flattering your resentment. The men of Shechem did not love Abimelech. They used him, and he used them, and each thought they were the one being clever. When someone tells you that your bitterness is really loyalty, or that your ambition is really justice, slow down. Ask who profits. Third, the harvest is real, even when it is slow. 3 years passed with nothing. Then everything came due at once, and it came from the same hands he had shaken. The Bible does not soften this. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that he will also reap. What Abimelech did to a family in a courtyard, a city did to him in a tower. And fourth, this is why the world needed a different kind of king. Look at what the story keeps showing you. The olive tree would not rule. The fig tree would not rule. The vine would not rule. Only the thorn bush wanted the crown, and the thorn bush had nothing to give but fire. That is every ruler in the book of Judges. That is most of human history. The people who want power the most are usually the ones least able to hold it. And then, generations later, a man came who had every right to a throne and did not grasp at it, who was crowned, and the crown was made of thorns, the bramble on the head of the one tree that actually bore fruit, who did not kill 69 brothers to save himself, but died to save 69 and 69 million more. Abimelech's story is a stone that ends a life. The gospel is a stone that begins one. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. 69 men died on a stone at Ophrah, so that one man could be king. One man died on a hill outside Jerusalem so that you could be free. You may have been passed over. You may be the one nobody counted. But you do not have to take a crown by blood. Because there is a king who already gave his. One stone was all it took. Based on Judges 8-9, with reference to Joshua 24:26-27, Psalm 118:22, and Galatians 6:7.